Hey everybody, what's going on? I'd like to wish everyone watching a happy new year and also like to welcome you all to the first episode of the Saturdays in Stores podcast in 2025. Pretty long 10-day break without Husky basketball. Definitely went by really slowly without being able to see UConn in action, but they played New Year's Day against DePaul and took home an 81-68 win at DePaul in Chicago at Wintrust Arena. I think this is a game that pretty much everyone expected UConn to win comfortably, and there was points where they were winning by 20 plus, and it got a little interesting. I wouldn't say concerning, but there was a point in the game later on where it got semi interesting, but UConn was able to figure it out and ultimately get a pretty comfortable win, winning by 13 points. I'm just going to recap what I was able to take away from the game and also just a quick preview on their matchup coming up on Sunday against Providence at Gamble Pavilion. But before we get into that, if you like this podcast, if you like the content you see on this channel, whether it's NBA, college basketball, or anything else, please review, subscribe, tell other people about it. Put your takes in the comments below. Me, Josh, and the other guys, we love seeing what you guys have to say about our content in the comments or some of your own personal takes about whatever it is we might be covering. So without wasting any more time, let's get into UConn's win against DePaul. UConn won 81-68. It was a game that was a little, close towards the beginning, but UConn pulled away, you know, going up close to, I want to say 20 going into the half with solo ball, knocking down the three as the time expired. Um, I would, I think I'm pretty comfortable saying that in terms of their perimeter defense, that first half was probably the best I've seen UConn play on the perimeter defensively this year. This DePaul team is a team that shoots the ball at a fairly high rate and is actually knocking down close to 40%, if not 40%, of their threes this season. This is a DePaul program that isn't going to be particularly competitive in Big East play and won't be competing for a Big East championship, but they are trending in the right direction. So I give their program a lot of credit. If they come out of this year with a win in Big East play, which I think they will this year, just with how weak the Big East is looking so far, from what we've seen in their out of conference scheduling and so far in league play. But I could definitely see this being the year that DePaul breaks the streak of their over 2 years without a conference win. I think UConn's game plan going into this game was to try to limit the amount of attempts from three that DePaul was going to be comfortable taking. They have fairly decent shooters, and UConn just did a really good job. I think while UConn is a lot smaller on the perimeter than they have been in the past 2 seasons, they still were, their UConn's backcourt was still larger than DePaul's in terms of their wingspans or height. And they were able to pressure the DePaul guards and really make them uncomfortable and force them to not be able to get the looks that they wanted. DePaul didn't take many threes in this game. I think this was the lowest amount of attempts that they had in a game this year, and definitely their worst shooting performance from three that they've had this season. So that was definitely encouraging to see. I understand, this is DePaul. It's not, a very competitive opponent that they were playing, but I think it's really important for UConn to see that they can be solid on the perimeter and, their length, and hopefully they're able to stay in front of guys and make it tough for teams to get off 3-point shots and being better in closing out on shooters. And they did a good job. So that was nice to see. Second half, they kind of weren't as good. That kind of seems to be a trend across some of these games in Big East play where their first halves are pretty good, but as the game kind of goes on, kind of a little more up and down defensively. In terms of the fouling, Samson Johnson didn't foul in this game. This was, that was good on him. Really nice to see Samson Johnson stay out of foul trouble. Terrace Reed, you know, again, not really in foul trouble either. Surprisingly, it's Hassan Diarra was the one who got into foul trouble later in this game and forced Aiden Mahaney to play some extended minutes, which I'll get into in a little bit. And offensively speaking, UConn shot the ball great. They shot 48% from the field and 48% from three. They knocked down 14 three-pointers against DePaul, 7 of those coming from Solo Ball, who broke his career high in three-pointers made in a game with 7. He went 7 for 9 from three, and tied his career high of 22 points, matching the mark he had against Xavier a few weeks back. But I mean, yeah, solo ball. I mean, there's an argument that you could make right now that solo ball looks like the best 3-point shooter in college basketball, which going into this year, I believed in solo ball a lot. I didn't think he was going to be this good. Um, I mean, this guy's legit. He's a legit NBA prospect type of guy. I mean, he needs to improve defensively. That's number one. But he's a great athlete, has a long wingspan, which I understand he's only 6'3" or 6'4", but the longer wingspan allows him to be a little bit more of a be it allows him to be a little bit more intimidating on the perimeter and being able to force guys to maybe not take shots or not feel as comfortable taking shots that they would say against a guard with a smaller wingspan. So that definitely helps. And I mean, with the shooting, he's able to get off some shots that had he has, if he were to have a shorter wingspan, he probably wouldn't be able to get off. And I mean, it really is a little reminiscent of Jordan Hawkins and his ability to just kind of come down and knock down 2, 3, 4 threes in a row and really bring a lot of energy to this team, kind of hype up the crowd when they're playing at home. And I mean, again, if he can improve defensively and do a little bit more in terms of being able to attack closeouts, get into the mid range game a little bit late in the clock, and being more of a kind of becoming more of a combo guard where he's comfortable playing the one at certain points with how thin this UConn team is at the point guard spot, and being able to do a little bit more in terms of distributing the ball and putting others in spots where they can score. I mean, that would set him up to, I think, be a lottery pick. I mean, that's definitely going to be up in the air, that question about whether solo ball tests the NBA waters at the conclusion of the season. Of course, it's going to depend on how he does throughout the course of the rest of the year through Big East play and heading into the tournament. But yeah, solo ball is a legit NBA player, I think, and I mean he's showing it right now, and it's really cool to see the player development in this UConn program where Dan really could have gone out and gotten guys, proven guys, but he's really relying and trusting the sophomore class to improve, and solo ball's done it. Jaden Ross and Jalen Stewart, they're still continuing to improve, trying to figure things out. Jalen Stewart hasn't played much over the last 2 games. I don't think that's necessarily any problem with him playing wise. From what I've heard, I don't know if it's true. There's a rumor he got pink eye and only practiced and missed 4 days of practice leading up to the DePaul game. So, if that's true, then that makes sense. But Jalen Stewart, if he can improve a little bit defensively, he's a great offensive player. Um, at least he's a little bit further along than Jaden Ross is in that skill set in terms of how good they are offensively. But Jalen Stewart and Jaden Ross, they're both, again, they have the chance to be NBA players. Um, and I think this coaching staff is really trying to get Jaden Ross to a point where they can carve out a role for him where he's a 20-minute a game guy, where he's a 3-and-D wing, a guy who could come in and be a defensive stopper who's has the size that some of the big time defenders that UConn's had the past few years, like an Andre Jackson Jr. or a Steph Castle, has had on the perimeter and on the wing, where he can get out and guard guys like he did against Ryan Emhart in the Gonzaga game, late in the game where he was able to force a steal and get the layup in transition. And if he's able to, I think the shot looks good. It's just the confidence and the consistency that he needs to improve upon in shooting the 3 ball. And if he's able to do that, I mean, that's just going to take this team to a new level. And I think for this team to be a legit national championship contender, they need Jaden Ross to get to that point where he can be a 20-minute a game guy and really be a big time 3-and-D player where he's able to at times guard the other team's best perimeter player on defense and then also be able to come in and knock down open shots when they need it. And again, Jalen Stewart, I mean, he's a guy that has a really good offensive skill set, and he just needs to improve a little bit with a little bit more of his decision making and being able to kind of let the game come to him and understand UConn sets and schemes and just improve a little bit defensively. But yeah, I mean, Hassan Diarra, 9 assists in this game to only 1 turnover, 7 points on top of that. He's really, I mean, he's completely transformed the point guard question that this UConn team has had. He's completely turned the narrative around. Went to this year, really big concern was point guard play. We saw it in Maui. Aiden Mahaney at point guard didn't work out. Sandiar came in, and ever since Maui, he's been great. He's looked like one of the best point guards in the country in terms of facilitating. He's definitely up there. I want to say he's top 10 in assists right now, assists per game. And I mean, he's done a really good job. I mean, he's playing most of the game too. And it's been really, really cool to see. But it's just to talk a little bit about where it kind of got interesting in this game. So late or fairly early into the second half, I think a little bit before the midway point in the second half, Liam McNeeley kind of goes down hard on his right foot, I want to say it was. And he went to the ground, couldn't get up. And he was obviously in some pain. He limped off the court with the help of some of the other players and coaching trainers, and the staff, the training staff, helping him get off the court. And he went to the locker room, and he eventually came back out, but it was in a boot. From what I hear, this injury isn't very serious, but if it is a thing where he does miss an extended period of time, that's a major blow to this team. Lee McNeeley's looked like one of the best freshmen in college basketball this year. He doesn't make a lot of the freshman mistakes you normally see, even out of a lot of five-star recruits. But I mean, he's lived up to the hype. He really is kind of becoming kind of like the Cam Spencer on this team in terms of not only the shot making ability and how they kind of run a lot of their sets through him and have them kind of be their offensive hub at times where they have actions with him taking the DHO and going to the basket with a big guy rolling to the rim. He's able to make the decision whether to go up with it himself or pass it down low to Terrace, Sampson, or Caravan, whoever's rolling down there. But and also just the energy he brings. It's a team that doesn't really have, as of right now, any true dogs or no one with that killer instinct that Dan Hurley kind of has talked about this team lacking, where they're able to get up, maybe 10 to 20 points, like we saw in the Butler game, where they went up 14, they went up 16 at certain points of the game, but they kind of let Butler creep back into the game and make it close and make it interesting, make it a little bit concerning at points. But I think, you know, Liam's kind of crucial in being an energy guy that, you see him do the fist pumps that kind of course, reminds you of Cam last year. But that's going to be important for this team. And if they're lacking that, then that's not good. And this team needs to develop that killer instinct where last year we saw UConn had a 10-point lead that suddenly turns into a 20-point lead and then that turns into 30. And they're able to just shut the door and put these teams away, put them to sleep, and really close out the game, no problem at all, without having any worry at any point in the game. And this team hasn't done that this year, and they need to continue to grow in being able to do that and stay locked in and keep the energy up in them trying to finish these games out strong and put these opponents away easier than what they've been doing. But yeah, I mean they need some guys to emerge as dogs, as killers, and they don't have that right now. I think you're going to look for guys like an Alex Caravan, Jaden Ross, hopefully on the defensive side, maybe Aiden Mahaney off the bench, Hassan Diar a little bit more. But, these are guys who, that's just not them in terms of the personality that we have on this team. And I think Liam kind of has that, and it's tough when they're not going to be having that out there. From what I've heard, I don't think he's going to play against Providence, which of course hurts, but that does open the window for possibly for guys like a Jaden Ross and Jalen Stewart to potentially start at that role in these games, be a starter, and continue to show that they've grown and try to continue to improve based off of what they've shown this year. There's been flashes for Stewart and Ross, both at certain points. Stewart, the 16 points in the first half against Memphis. Jaden Ross in some of those earlier games before Maui. I think, he had 14 points in one of those games, looked really good on the offensive side. But I mean, if they can both just continue to improve and really show how much they've grown and prove that they're going to be capable contributors for this team, not only this year, but going into next year as well, that's going to be crucial to watch out for. And I think they both have a really legit chance to be able to do that. To talk about Aiden Mahaney a little bit, after that Liam McNeeley injury, Hassan Diar picked up his fourth foul, got into foul trouble, and Dan Hurley was in a spot where he had to play Mahaney for an extended minutes, an extended period of time. And I think that was really good for Aiden Mahaney to be able to. I think Hurley understood that Mahaney really hasn't seen since Maui a high volume of minutes playing when the game's kind of tight and it's a crucial spot where they need him to play and make good decisions. And I think this was a perfect opportunity for him to play that extended amount of time where Hassan's in foul trouble, Liam went down, but you still have a 10-point lead. I know DePaul cut it to 9 at one point, but they, Caravan knocked down 3 in the corner, Solo knocked down 3 in the corner, and Caravan hit 1 on the wing, and they were able to kind of separate themselves a little bit. But I mean, I think to allow Mahaney to play and really not have to worry about any mistakes. I just don't think that, it wasn't a game where any of the mistakes Mahaney could have made would be detrimental to the team and really hurt them or hurt their chances of being able to win this game. And I think that was good to let him play and really just kind of play through his mistakes and be able to figure it out there. He scored 7 points, added 4 assists, only one turnover, 0 for 3 from 3 point range. He wasn't able to knock down three. But I mean, he had a few good takes to the basket, and I think that was encouraging to see. And I mean, that pass he had to Jaden, where he was able to drive to the basket and throw that bounce pass to Jaden Ross, who was cutting for Jaden Ross to finish up and under on the other side of the rim. That was a really good pass, and I think it was encouraging to see Mahaney show that he's kind of has the playmaking abilities and has a chance to be a compatible distributor that we were kind of sold, that Danny Hurley kind of sold to the UConn fans going into the season with Mahaney being the starting point guard. Obviously, he's fallen out of that role, and it's been unfortunate to see with the confidence issues he's had. And he's had moments like in Baylor where he knocked down those three threes, those two back to back early in the game, which kind of sparked the crowd, sparked the team's energy, and fueling the comeback against Baylor early in that game. But I mean, Mahaney, I understand that Mahaney potentially could be a rare miss in the transfer portal by his coaching staff that's been really successful in who they choose to pick and recruit out of the portal. But I mean, I thought maybe Mahaney can become more of like a Joey Calcaterra part two, where he can be a guy who plays, 8 to 10 minutes a game and be kind of instant offense. But I think they need him to be more than that. There's going to be, this might not be the only time that Hassan Diarra gets in foul trouble, and they need him to play an extended amount of time. And I think with Liam being out, that might open the door for him to get some more minutes and try to show that he has the shot making ability that was advertised in his play at St. Mary's. And I think the biggest thing for him is just being able to relax and just play. I think he's playing a role which he hasn't done before. He didn't do it at St. Mary's the last 2 seasons he was there, where he's kind of the point guard whenever he's out there. Obviously, he usually comes in with Hassan Diarra, goes to the bench. And I mean, I think he has a little bit of trouble kind of reading what he's getting off of UConn sets in terms of what he's seen against the defense. And I think he can just calm down and kind of play to his strengths. Mahaney's a lot better when he's able to be aggressive and be in a scoring role where he can not have to worry about that and just focus on playing his game and being able to go to the basket and hit shots. I mean, he's a good 3 point shooter. We haven't seen it this year so far, but he can hit shots. And I think once he gets that confidence up, and UConn's going to need him to, because I mean, there could be stretches in Big East play or in the tournament where they're going to need him to play. They're going to need him to play high volume minutes potentially, and he's going to have to be able to come in and hit shots. And I think he's fully capable of doing that still. I'm still a believer in Aiden Mahaney. I know a lot of people have written him off. Um, I definitely think he was going to be a lot better than what we've seen so far this year, but I'm not writing him off just yet. I think he still has a chance to be a big contributor for this team off the bench. And I mean, I think they're going to need him to be for them to get to a top five team level, a true national championship contender level, which I don't think they're at just yet, but I think they definitely can get there. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers up all my takeaways I had from the DePaul game. Just to preview the Providence matchup a little bit. So they play at 2 p.m. on Sunday against Providence at Gamble Pavilion, the New England rivalry. Providence coming over from Rhode Island. Kim English's second year hasn't been great. Providence only has one win against a high major program this year, that being against BYU at the Dunk, where they won by almost 20 points, I want to say. Now, I mean, that was a good game. They had Bryce Hopkins available in that game. He's only played 3 games this year. Injuries has been terrible for Providence the last 2 years. They lost Bryce Hopkins last year, and he's seen limited action this year, only playing 3 games. And I mean, if he's playing, that's really good for them. And he definitely can cause some matchup problems for Terrace Reed and Samson Johnson. He's a guy who definitely can get both those guys in foul trouble. If he's not playing, then Providence tends to not play very well, and Bryce Hopkins isn't on the floor. Of course, they have guys like Jaden Pierre, who have looked pretty good this year. But, this is a team that is a little bit different than DePaul. I'm going to be curious to see how they match up defensively against Providence. I'm curious to see if they continue to really go all into that limit the limiting the 3-point attempts that Providence takes, like they did against DePaul. But Providence is a team that likes to go one-on-one much more than DePaul does. So that'll be a little interesting to see. Definitely another test for the perimeter defense that UConn has and the guards. That's just definitely going to be something to watch for. I understand Liam McNeeley probably isn't going to play, so that does create some problems for UConn offensively. And Evan Mee actually put out a stat where Liam McNeeley is the highest rated defender on this UConn team, surprisingly. You would think it's Hassan Diar, but Liam McNeeley, UConn plays its best defense when Liam is on the floor. So that's definitely going to be something to watch out for, how they play defensively without Liam. Obviously, watching the game, nothing really wows you from Liam defensively speaking, but I mean, hey, if that's what the stats say, then that's what they say. And I guess Liam is a pretty important piece of the defense. So, yeah, I think you're just going to look for Jaden Ross or Jalen Stewart. I'm assuming one of those guys is going to get the start in place of Liam. I would probably think Jalen Stewart gets the start, just considering that he started against Baylor when Alex Caravan went down. And I mean, positionally, I think it would just make sense for Stewart to start. So yeah, that's good. It's going to be fun to see Jalen Stewart get some minutes. Jaden Ross definitely going to get some more minutes too. Hopefully, Aiden Mahaney can get going, continue to grow and become better, both passing and kind of just easing into the game. You know, Aiden Mahaney is never going to be a good defender, but if he can get to the point where, you know, he's good enough and he's not an absolute defensive liability the way he kind of has been this year, where a lot of teams are kind of just singling him out on defense and having whoever he's guarding go one-on-one with him, then I mean that's just really important for him to grow in terms of just playing better defense. But yeah, it's a game that I expect UConn to win, being that they're playing at Gamble Pavilion. Should be a good showing from the crowd. The energy should be high, and yeah, I'm going to be very excited to watch the game. So I think that's pretty much going to cover everything for this episode. Again, if you like this podcast, please subscribe, tell other people about it. All helps with the algorithm on YouTube and getting this content out to more people. Until the next episode, I will see you all next time.